Hi, everybody. Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the month of June, actually, and the week of June 2nd through 8th. And gonna tell you the month of June is mainly dominated by Jupiter, which is going to be changing signs and going into Cancer and then making three aspects to the outer planets. And then this week, we've got two of the inner planets, Mercury and Venus, both changing signs, and Mercury a little bit more active too, with some other stuff going on. So, just a little business first. The Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I do on YouTube every week. And if you like what you're seeing and you have a YouTube account, please become a follower. And don't forget to turn your notifications on when you do, or you won't be notified when the blog is put up every week and you'll probably forget. So you want to do that. And remember, the blog was a podcast long before it was a YouTube channel. So it's still available on podcast too. The exact same thing, the same exact audio feed, just no video. And that frees you up, when you're on podcasts, you can, do other stuff, be able to do other things and not be attached to watching something like going to the gym or whatever. So like, just look it up on your podcast, on your app. Just look up Astrological Winds channel. You'll find it out there on a few different podcasts for sure. And also, if you have an Instagram page, so does Astrological Winds channel. So if you want to become a follower of it, it will also show up. The link of the weekly will show up for the blog every week on your newsreel. And then the best way to find it every week or anytime, and going back for months, actually, if you want to go back and look at some of the older blogs or hear some of the older blogs, is on my website, and that's at www.astrologicalwinds.com. Not Winds Channel, just winds.com. And it also has a calendar page there, and that's also the spot where you can find all my professional services. I've been a professional astrologer for over 20 years. I was trained for 7 years, schooling and testing and that. So I'd love to do your chart or do someone that you know that's looking for some kind of astrological chart work, all kinds of different stuff too. So check the menu there. If you need to work with me with, in payments, that's fine too. Also, there's information there for groups and students. And yes, so anyway, go back into the blog. I'll go into more of that information at the end in more detail. Just remember to please pass the blog along. That's what I ask that people do in order pay forward this free service that I give every week. And also remember, if you're not familiar with astrology terms, don't get stuck on the astrology terms. Then just listen to what the energy is so that you can use that. And remember also, your own chart is also influencing the energy of how you experience life every day too. It's not just this in a vacuum. So let me do June 1st. It's the month of June 1st, and it's all about Jupiter this month. And remember, on the monthly stuff, I'm only really looking at the outer planets and what they're doing with each other. And so this month's all about Jupiter. And if you remember, it's been in Gemini for the most of the past year. And that means that, it was in the sign of its detriment and not really very comfortable there. And now it's going into Cancer for the rest of this year and into next year, pretty much for almost a full year. We're going to get Jupiter in Cancer, which is just great, actually, because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. It is one of the three signs that it is most comfortable in. It really likes to be in Cancer. So this is like just really good. And it's going to be June 9th is when it will actually go into Cancer, okay? And so, like, when Jupiter's in Cancer, it really works hard on getting emotional security, not only for the self, but loved ones also. And the loved ones usually extend out into the community too. So, like, the family kind of extends out, and it really wants, like coming out of a sign, Gemini, where there's very little emotional content, with as far as Jupiter is concerned, and now going into a sign that is one of the most emotional signs. Jupiter really is looking for like emotional security, and it wants to take care of others, and it wants to take care of itself. So what happens with a lot of us during Jupiter in Cancer? And remember, Jupiter changes signs every year. So about 12 years ago was the last time that Jupiter was in Cancer. So you can wind back to 2000, and what would that be? 2013, right? And that would give us an idea of the energy of Jupiter in Cancer. And if you can remember what was going on in your life then, that can kind of be the energy that can be very similar. But what happens with many of us when Jupiter goes into Cancer is we become very involved with our families, and that includes anybody who supports us, And like I said, with Jupiter being a social planet, that also goes out into the community. So like we're really looking for people that we feel we can depend on emotionally, like ones that we know will take care of us and we're willing to take care of them. And that, that goes out, like I said, into the community. There's really a care that comes through in this. And it's a traditional sign, Cancer, and it realizes that, the community needs to be part of some in a stable place and in a nurturing place in order to have the stability and feel good. And one of the things to remember about that too is because of that, there's a lot of trust in the past and in the way things were, and trying to bring that in to the present so that we can still continue to feel that security that we felt like we had in the past. Now, another thing to really remember here, too, especially for most of my listeners who are in the United States is a Cancer sun country. July 4th is our birthday, right? So that's Cancer. And so this is like a time where, in the United States, where we may be really being called to care for one another on a community level this next year. And that's where you can see where society really works, like down on the nuts and bolts. That's where people are really connecting with one another, and like it's more community, it's more social, and there's more things actually going on. Like that's where we realize our family is beyond our biology, even beyond our best friends, that it's like a community, and that can be brought out into a nation even, and once again, like, Cancer can be a very nationalistic sign, actually. So the United States will probably continue politically with the current administration having this very nationalistic, me first, protecting Americans first, based on past type of energy, the past culture, the past heritage, driving that and feeling like that will have our answers for now. But on a personal level, we're really looking for those people that we can count on emotionally. And like, we really know, we can feel that in the positive vibe that they give out. Jupiter's got this very positive energy. So we know that is, and one of the things I will say too about Jupiter going into Cancer is when you think about like what Jupiter is, expands things. So like when you think about in business, the things that'll probably expand will be things related to home and family and taking care of those kind of basic needs. And then just, a little commentary in the sense of like Jupiter going into Cancer at a time when the economy is kind of roiling and it's unstable, and the world is very unstable socially and culturally and politically and religiously. You can see how Jupiter in Cancer is fitting on one level for that energy, right? And also beneficial on another level for responding to where the world is at that energy, because it is a time when things are threatening our basic security stuff, the things that cancer is very interested in, food and home and shelter and healthcare for us and our loved ones. That's when we will really focus on those things. So, that's what's going on right now, obviously, when people's like, going to the store and things keep going up in price and, those kind of things, it really makes people circle the wagon, so to speak. And then that not only can take us out of like the national, personal level, but take us right up to community, right? Where we're interacting more with community and trying to build support systems there, which is a really good thing. But then we can take it all the way up to a national level. And that's where we have to be a little bit careful again. Yes, our country first, whatever country we're in, is usually the way we feel. But like, is that all of a sudden like, this really defensive posturing and this really um, behavior that's really only protecting like this few that all of a sudden we're feeling threatened by all our resources, so like that family becomes fewer, like we throw out immigrants or whatever we do in reaction to that on a social level. So like I said, I think it can be a little bit of a mix with this one. I really think that the energy of it can be like taken to too far of an extreme too. And if it gets too nationalistic and too protective and stuff, then we're reacting out of negative emotions and doing a lot of like defensive type posturing instead. So that's kind of interesting on that level. Now, the other thing that is going to happen as soon as Jupiter goes into Cancer, remember that Neptune and Saturn both were going into Aries together, another cardinal sign. So, what does that mean? That means as soon as Jupiter goes into Cancer, it's going to end up squaring both Saturn and Neptune. And so that will happen on the square to Saturn happens on the 11th, and the square to Neptune happens on the 17th. And I honestly think, you guys, that once again, they're not acting in a vacuum. It's not going to be one after the other, right? Jupiter and Neptune have a lot in common, right? They're the two most spiritual planets. They're the two planets that are the most interested in religion and philosophy and abstract things, values, ideals, things like that. So this is, the Jupiter square Neptune is actually going to feed the Neptune part of the equation. But remember what I said last week and the week before is that with Saturn and Neptune operating together with two very dissimilar, literally almost opposing energies, that can be really good. It can bring those two energies together, that where all of a sudden the ideas, the abstractions, the values of the right brain, that creative part of us can actually be brought down into solid reality with Saturn and they put it into the real world. So like I said, normally with Jupiter and Saturn in a square together, that you could get really far out with a lot of your ideals and they could be really ungrounded and impractical. But Saturn, once again, is going to reel us back in, right? It's going to it's first of all, it's going to make us willing to work hard on those ideals, like not just have these ideals, but really be willing to look into working hard to make them work for us in the real world. So that's really a good thing on that level, and Saturn's also going to be the voice of authority and reality that's actually testing those ideals. That's actually saying, is there validity in some of these ideals that you have, or are they just way too wild? So, like, literally, Saturn's going to be the fire of testing in reality. Like, can can society and culture test these beliefs and values that you have in reality and see if there's really some value in them? One of the things to be careful of with Jupiter and Neptune, right, is like, just like Jupiter in Cancer, it's a very giving energy. It wants to give to others and protect others. And Jupiter Neptune can take it too far, right? You can give too much to people who really, that they're just takers. They're not, they're playing a victim or martyr role, and they're not going to pull themselves up. So once again, we have to ask ourselves, are they really worthy of that? Or is it better to give them some kind of structure? It's kind of like, do you give the man fish, or do you teach him to fish? That kind of level. Do have Saturn come in and tell people you need to have this discipline, that's part of the answer of what we're having, but so it can make us very optimistic, right? But at the same time, the Cancer part and the Saturn part can have us be careful and conservative in our approach, and so there's some grounding that can come back in, is my point with that. This is, and Jupiter Neptune too is also a time where we can really have some kind of spiritual awakening. But once again, we have to be really careful that it's not something that we're just floating off with, and it's not very grounded in this energy, right? So Saturn once again is going to bring us back with that stuff and really, even test those values that we have. But it's saying to us, yeah, there are certain value systems that we will need to update in order to make things happen in this real world. Also, we also have one other aspect that Jupiter is making at the end of the month. Jupiter is going to quincunx Pluto also, right? And once again, this can be some restless energy. We can find ourselves in power, but we have to be really careful about the way we use our power, right? Like, if we're using it to just for ourselves, then a lot of things can go off. But even if we're having like these higher values that the Jupiter Neptune gives, even if we're having some of the restlessness that Jupiter Saturn gives, and we really are trying to figure out what we can put in the real world, this Jupiter Pluto shows that we can catch the attention of certain people who are in power or authority, who don't like the way we're going, and they will work to try to block what we're doing. Okay, so we have to be really careful, first of all, not being selfish ourselves. But even if we get through that hoop, we have to be really realize that we could get into some serious conflicts with authorities that just are feeling threatened by what we're having to do, by the influence that we may even have on others. That could even get them riled at us. So remember, it's all good to seek power for yourself, but we have to make sure that it's helping others out too. And there can be, with Jupiter quincunx Pluto too, there can be a natural feeling of not trusting others, what is their motives? And that may be the energy that powerful people putting back at you. So yeah, so it's just like I said, all this together, really want to use that Saturn to bring the discernment in and to really focus on, the people and the things that we feel are valuable and reliable, and, and not go for people that, may have some kind of scheme going on, or, something like that, and if we have businesses going on, this can be a key time in our business, right? Like whatever tension areas, you don't want to ignore them. You want to take care of them, because the things you do now in business or with projects can have a far reaching effect in the future. I mean, for some of us, we may even change the way we do business. And or we may even change our career, if we're not feeling the values or aligning with reality enough, So we really can have that discernment because of Saturn. But and remember, this is a time too where you really need to rely on yourself for those answers, because other people are just too caught up in what they want you to do for them in relation to what they're up to. So you really need, if you have to, even take some time and go off and get some time alone. All right, I better get to the weekly. I've been spending a lot of time on this. So the main thing, like I said, this week is Mercury and Venus are both changing signs, but there's a few other aspects I wanted to go through first. And the first one's Wednesday. There's a beautiful aspect. One of the best aspects there is when Venus is sextiling Jupiter, two beneficial planets in a really harmonious aspect with one another. So this can bring benefits in, especially through friends and others that are loved ones, including locals and neighbors. So there's that connection again with that Jupiter Cancer, and working on a local level too, bringing that energy of family out a little bigger, and here's what, when you do that, what happens: you expand your scope, and then more benefits come in because you've made more connections. So like, it's like passing around the business card. If you have a neighborhood gathering and you meet 100 new neighbors, and everybody's telling each other, this is the gig that I'm in, right? You're going to pick up some new energy there. You're going to pick up some, this is that kind of energy. It can bring in business opportunities. It can bring in money. It can bring in assets and favors and things like that, helpful energy through relationships, right? And here it's really good too for romantic relationships. So like, if you have any sparks of romance going on right now, this is like a time where relationships that start under Venus Jupiter are very mutually beneficial. Okay. Like, people have bring out their best for each other under this energy. They want to be their best for each other. It's really loving and beautiful, beautiful energy. And it's very, we feel very at peace inside ourselves, and therefore that gets projected out to our friends, to the environment, to the world in general. And some other good things about Venus Jupiter sextile is a good time for financial investing, also getting benefits sometimes through the law. You may get some, legal thing that's a good decision for you, or getting benefits through medicine even, but in general, just a very generous and giving kind of feeling and attitude. And if nothing else, on Wednesday, it should be a relatively pleasant day, Thursday, right before Mercury changes signs, it's doing a couple things too, just like Venus did. Mercury is going to sextile Mars and square the nodal axis on Wednesday. So Mercury sextile Mars is great. I mean, this is like having a lot of energy behind what we believe in. Okay. And we really want to get it out there. We want to, we're very enthusiastic. We're very optimistic and assertive about the things we believe in. So there's a lot of strong mental energy, motivation. It's really, if you have, once again, I've said this before, if you have a paperwork project, computer work, intellectual work, things like that, this is a great day to do it. you're very, very motivated to push through those things. It's going to be a very, very busy day, but a lot of very interesting things come into our mind and, fill us with initiative, fill us with drive, fill us with motivation, that we want to, push those things, that we really like to get the word out. Now, I will say this. I think it would be best to work alone again. Mars always is that factor. It's hard for people to match the subjective interests we all have within ourselves when Mars is there. But then the nodal axis being a square too shows there's definitely people who won't have the same interest level as we do, and will not meet us halfway. So like you can actually start to question some of their motives, or they could be questioning yours, and asking one another whether you're using one another. It can kind of disturb relationships. So it is best to work alone if you can. There's a lot of confidence in yourself, a lot of belief in yourself. Then Thursday is also the day that Venus does change signs, finally goes into Taurus. Now, if you remember, Venus went into Aries all the way back in early February. It's actually been like almost 5 months, right? And it retrograded in Aries and went back into Pisces for a while, back into Aries again. So it's been a long journey of mainly in Aries, a sign that Venus is not happy in, and creates a lot of conflict, a lot of selfish energy there. And here we go into Taurus, and this is one of the signs that Venus rules. Venus, the goddess, finally gets relief after these many months of Aries energy. And this is when Venus, as the goddess coming to Earth, enjoys all the sensual pleasures of Mother Earth, the physical world, the things that we see, smell, taste, hear, touch, especially touch, right? With Taurus, it's very tactile, earthy kind of energy, So this is a time where we can be very warm and friendly with others. We want to keep the emotions not very deep, and we want to keep them on the happy, positive side. We want to enjoy life with others. We want to, build a lot of stability into our relationships by knowing that we're dedicated and loyal to the ones that we love. So this is very, very beautiful energy. It's also about just enjoying the finer things in life, and however you define that, right? Like whatever you consider fine, luxurious, beautiful, relaxing, that is the kind of things we like to enjoy, and especially socially with friends. So really, 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 really sweet with that. Very willing to give in relationships, especially to our loved ones. It's also Venus and Taurus is once again good for investments, long-term stable investments in particular. Also good for doing creative physical work. And any like actually activating on some of the physical things, and especially like sculpting things that are tactile, using tools to do creative stuff, but really into stabilizing our love relationship. So it, to me, just plays in really well once again with Jupiter in Cancer, and once again showing that astrology not working in a vacuum, a time where we're trying to bring stability to our loved ones, and in a time when there's not a lot of stability in the world. Now, Friday, there's one little Mercury sextile in Chiron. And Mercury sextile in Chiron gives a very curious mind about wanting to learn things that are helpful to us, that like we might be a little bit puzzled or troubled about, that furrowed brow kind of energy that we have about, and we may find something very interesting that stokes our thoughts about this stuff, and then be like, wow, this is a really valuable piece of information and knowledge, and we may want to share it with others too. We may bring it out and talk to others about it, but it really can act, I call it like a balm, like a healing balm on the mind. The information that we get today can ease maybe some of that nervous anxiety, mental anxiety that we may have about something. And then Sunday, two more Mercury things. Right before Mercury goes into Cancer, it does a conjunction with Jupiter, which is right before Jupiter goes into Cancer. So at the critical 30th degree of Gemini, Mercury conjunct Jupiter. I would say this is like, take your biggest plans and push it and go for it. This is all about having a huge idea, having an idea for your future, for your vision. And it's very tolerant. It's willing to take in information from any source that's going to give more, so we can come up with some new, big, wide plans. And we have a much greater perspective and understanding of not only life, but how we fit in it and how our energy works in the world. So we can really add to widening and adjusting our values in life, and and just taking it to a new level, really, like, this is great for business, business planning, organizing, launching new business ideas or projects, any other kind of project that you're really into, learning new things. The biggest issue with Mercury Jupiter is the tendency to get like so high from it that you kind of get arrogant or self righteous, and therefore may overlook certain details or decide you just don't even have the time to take care of them. And at some point in the future, in the cycle of the Mercury Jupiter of whatever is being launched now, conjunction, new stuff, those things that you don't take care of now will come and crop up at some point in the future of this cycle, and you'll have to deal with them, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when I decided not to deal with that. Yeah, I think I just lost my microphones, but I think we may be on here still. And then Mercury going into Cancer, and that is after 2 or 3 weeks of Mercury in Gemini, a sign that it is in rulership. It goes into Cancer in a sign where it's not nearly as comfortable. And this is mainly because the emotions are influencing our thoughts, our mind, and our speech right now. We have a very subjective way of looking at things when Mercury is in Cancer. Like, we actually will trigger a lot of past memories, things that we haven't thought of. You ever wonder like why you're sitting there and all of a sudden you remember something you haven't thought of in years? It's kind of, that's a Mercury in Cancer kind of thing. But but we'll also see where a lot of our ideas and thoughts and speech and patterns and the things that we do come from our past, from our family, from our upbringing, and that they are important to us, a lot of them. However, that's also what makes it very difficult to change when Mercury is in Cancer. It's like all of a sudden we're being asked to change, and we're like, well, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. So it can make all of a sudden the mind can lose its calmness and get really emotionally upset because the things that we did in the past are not fitting well with the world in the present right now. So we have to make some kind of adjustments. So we can get very emotionally upset when the viewpoint of this world is not agreeing with us, and it can be hard to calm down at times with Mercury in Cancer. Once again, it's that Cancer energy of giving a conservative viewpoint. Cancer coming from the past and believing that that's the way it should be. And even when Cancer is allowing something new in, it says to it, you need to prove yourself to me first before I accept you. Like, you're going to have to prove that you're valuable. But Cancer doesn't fall victim to pop culture or fads or things like that. It really wants some reliability, and it knows that what that is based on the past, so it can be hard for it to give it up. All right, well, that's what I got for this week. Next week, we do have a full moon. It's going to be at 21 degrees of Sagittarius, so I will definitely be talking about that one.
And it looks like, Mars, next week is the Jupiter-Saturn square exact too that I talked about right at the beginning of this. So we'll be full on into that energy. Some other stuff going on with the planets next week too. So that's what I got for us this week. This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Wings channel. You are about to turn this link on to somebody else in your contacts list. Even if you've done it 10 times already, you're going to do it again, because I've done the blog way more than 10 times, right? And you can do it again. And thank you for passing it on. If you'd like to give a donation to the blog, no amount is too small. No amount of currency is too small. My Cash App is the $sign and then Matthew with two T's, Lawton, L-A-U-T-E-N, all one word. And then my Venmo is the at symbol, the A with the circle, and then Matthew, once again, with two T's, hyphen in the middle, L-A-U-T-E-N, capital L-A-U-T-E-N. And remember, the blog is a free one on YouTube. It's also available on podcasts, and it's also, you can find all the links to all the past blogs on my website. So if you need to go check out the yearly one or last month's one or last week's one, they're all there under the blog tab. Check the calendar tab out too. I can show some weekly calendar dates and interesting what's going on in those days in the past. And also, that's where all my professional services are listed. I've been a professional astrologer for over 20 years. Did 7 years of formal training. I would love to do your chart for you or somebody else that's looking to have chart work done. I also do predictive readings, children's relationship, elections. I also do group stuff, lectures, workshops, classes, readings for groups, things like that. Also looking for a couple more beginner students so we can do a live beginners class, but I do have beginner classes available for purchase on just podcasts. Also, if you know anyone else that would be interested in any of those services, please pass the link along to them too. I really would appreciate that. All right, you guys, that's what I got for this week. Next week we'll look at that full moon in Sag, amongst other things. And until then, let's enjoy now this new year of Jupiter going into Cancer. And I'll see y'all next week.